Hey everybody, welcome back to the studio. I'm Joe, and I'm here today alone because Josh and Wyatt said they had to go on an adventure to hunt alligators. So I'm here by myself today, and I'm going to be bringing you guys a reaction for the Before the Dance and Illustrated History with George R.R. Martin. I'm going to be doing a reaction, giving my commentary and my thoughts along the way. So let's enjoy this together. Glad you're here. Let's get into it.
Dragons will rule the Seven Kingdoms for the next 100 years.
I mean, right off the bat, I'm super pleased with the aesthetic that we've seen from the teasers and all of the trailers and the featurettes that they've come out with so far, because good grief, does it remind me of Game of Thrones, that aesthetic that is so nostalgic for all of us that are fans of this body of work. So let's keep watching.
Just as they did the last.
Cool dragon. Heck yeah. Which, by the way, one thing that was in Game of Thrones, but we heard whispers in the show of the past about all of these great dragons. I'm so excited. I'm so excited for all of the cool dragons and the variety of dragons that we see in the trailers and that we're going to see in the show. I love dragon shows. I love awesome visuals of dragons. And even just this shot right here shows me that this show is going to be filled with incredible artwork that's extremely convincing of the world that we are entering into for this story.
The best fiction, the best drama is about characters. The story of House of the Dragon is a story about very flawed human beings, capable of doing good things, capable of doing monstrous things, capable of courage, capable of cowardice. These are the kind of characters that I love the most.
And we saw that in Game of Thrones, obviously. Everything he described for the House of the Dragon and the characters that we're going to see in the show, the series, is almost identical to the nature of what we saw in Game of Thrones. So obviously this is Martin's favorite type of character for story writing, which I think is reminiscent of real world as well.
Game of Thrones begins roughly 298 AC, almost 300 years after Aegon's conquest.
Okay.
House of Dragon takes place a couple hundred years before Game of Thrones. Jaehaerys Targaryen, the old king who was the fourth Targaryen to rule over Westeros, he was only 14 when he ascended to the Iron Throne.
Wow.
And he ruled for 55 years. It was a very peaceful time in the history of Westeros. It was a time of prosperity. King's Landing really grew enormously.
That's kind of cool. When we came into Game of Thrones, King's Landing was this very dark city that honestly people didn't enjoy, but it's where everything important happened. And so I know it's not necessarily the nature for House of the Dragon, but that time period where what Martin's talking about right now, I would love to see kind of this growth and beginning stage of Westeros, to see what the kings and the people and the relationship between the kingdoms had with each other during that period of time. That sounds like an awesome moment in the history of Westeros that I would love to view and enjoy.
It was a good time. Viserys the First, who is the heir that was chosen by the Great Council, when Jaehaerys passes away, he takes over, and he is now reigning over the Seven Kingdoms. There were a lot of Targaryens at that point. And you can see how the seeds of war are sometimes planted in a time of peace. People.
That's pretty introspective, that concept. Seeds of war are planted during times of peace. I remember I've heard this one quote. I don't know who did it. A lot of people quote this concept where it's like people who know peace tend to be more likely to get into wartime, and people that know war tend to avoid it at all costs for peace. And so I think that's really interesting that he's bringing this story into actual human evolution of political and social intrigue, you know? That seems common in this world, and it seems even common in our world.
Die, and the sons take over for fathers as lords, and they don't necessarily think they're bound by their fathers' allegiances or decisions or vows. So little by little, the seeds are spreading.
That's so incredibly introspective. That makes me think of even today with our world, how we don't respect, our forefathers, our ancestors, our parents, our grandparents who's known a different time, and how that can lead us into a place of, pride, how that can lead us into a place of, I don't know, darkness in a lot of ways. And it's cool how he's illustrating this story in a fictional fantasy setting.
Game of Thrones focused on the Starks and the Lannisters. For House of the Dragon, the Targaryens themselves, the House of the Dragon, are at center, but two of the biggest players in the Dance with the Dragons Civil War are the Valerions and the Hightowers. In terms of history in Westeros, the Hightowers are the oldest. They've been there for thousands of years. Their seat of power is Old Town, which was for many hundreds and thousands of years.
And I think we saw Old Town. In Game of Thrones. Tell me in the comments if we did. He might actually just tell. He's getting ready to say it was destroyed or something. I don't know. I don't know a lot about the history before Game of Thrones. So leave in the comments. Let me know, and he might answer this question. I don't know.
The biggest city in Westeros. They're a very rich house. Old Town is wealthy from trade mostly. And in the center of it is the High Tower, for which the Hightowers take their name. Lord Hightower is in Old Town, ruling over his domains in the city. But his younger brother, Otto Hightower, is the hand of the king when the story opens.
There's always mischief going on with the hand of the king. From everything we've seen, there's always something sketchy in the background with the hand of the king.
Position we saw Ned Stark play to Robert at the beginning.
Of course, obviously, Ned Stark, which that was kind of sketch also, but we wanted to see Ned succeed because he was fighting against corruption. We all know how that story lands.
Of Game of Thrones. The Valerians were also a house from the freehold of Valeria.
I'm excited about the Valerians.
Empire in at least the west in my world. And they actually arrived in West.
I love the personalization, because whenever we see stuff like this, we always hear people saying Martin's World or Westeros or King's Landing, this world. It's fun to hear the author be like, in my world. I don't know. You just don't hear it as much. An elaborate story like this just has to pay homage to the writer, Martin.
Westeros before the Targaryens. They were not dragon lords, however. They were seafarers. At that time, the freehold of Valeria depended a lot on its trade, and it was a good position to dominate trade from all the kingdoms of Westeros and from other places even further north. So they moved for reasons of trade and wealth. Corlys Valerion is Lord Admiral and Master of Ships, as his own grandfather was before him of a similar name. So since Aegon's conquest, the Valerians have been very high in the councils of the House Targaryen.
Okay.
And after all his voyages, he's married to Rhaenys Targaryen, the queen who never was. House Targaryen.
That's a fun detail that's completely passed me by during the rollout of information for this show.
And House Valerion, they were close. There was a definite relationship between them. The Targaryens are also an ancient house, but they're not an ancient Westerosi house. They knew that destruction was coming to Valeria and went far away from the capital city, and they settled on the volcanic island of Dragonstone.
Dragonstone. Heck yeah. I remember when they went to Dragonstone in Game of Thrones, Khaleesi and Tyrion, who was the Hand at the time. Super cool. It felt like Daenerys was coming home, which obviously it kind of is.
They were dragon lords in
Look at that white dragon. That's cool as crap. That's an awesome piece of artwork.
Valerion. Now, dragons are really formidable, and they can turn the tide of a battle.
Oh, as we've seen.
It flies. It's difficult to hit. It breathes fire, against which most knights and men-at-arms have little or no protection.
I would say
do have
none.
Dragons, and that's where the nuclear option analogy comes in.
Nuclear
Not to
option.
mess around with. So the dragons and fear of dragons was one of the things that made the Targaryens very secure in their power.
Before we go on, let me know in the comments which house, if you had to pick any of the houses in this world, which house would you want to be born into? Personally, I'm vibing with Starks, and that might be biased because we saw so much of Starks in Game of Thrones, but I just kind of like what the Starks stand for. I like their history. I like how, they had a rough backstory with the children, and over time they came to adopt the old gods, and how they're just rough, and they're the protectors of the North, and I just kind of think I'd want to be a Stark. Let me know what you think you would want to be, which house. If you say Lannister, you're whack.
Dragon Cell is one thing, but the Iron Throne is the most dangerous seat in the realm.
Heck yeah. Okay, I mean, while they say it, let's just go with it. Choose your plan. $9.99 a month, HBO Max, so we can all enjoy House of the Dragon together. Let me tell you what, that's exciting. I love this little very basic breakdown that Martin has brought to us. I love all of the visuals, the art that just enforces what he is talking about, mixed with art that we've seen from the trailer, maybe a little bit of extra. Who knows? I think it's all very exciting. I'm super intrigued how people like Martin and even Tolkien, although Tolkien has been passed for a while now, how they rebirthed in themselves an idea where they're like, I must tell an elaborate story, a story that for the rest of my life I will be known for. And that's a really interesting concept. I think creatives on some level always want something that they will be known for in the long run, in the long term. And so I have to appreciate the creators who are bringing us their story accurately. I have to appreciate, especially with HBO and their history of working with Martin and giving him a story that, for the most part, he is happy with, maybe minus the end of Game of Thrones, the last couple seasons where Dan and David were doing some sketch creating, directing for the show. I wish I could have had like 2 more seasons to finish off that story. Either way, I'm really inspired by storytellers. I'm really inspired by creatives who love creating a history, literally a historical narrative body of work that you tell these stories inside of. It's not simply just writing a book of a story of characters and you're kind of laying out what happens, but it's an actual, in order for you to become fully engrossed in this, we have to write an entire history of what happens so that the characters have something to reference and so that the fans have something to go do research on, and how, it kind of separates the casual viewers from the super fans. And when it comes to Game of Thrones, I have not delved into the literature yet. I have read pieces of it, for scenes in Game of Thrones. I have gone and read the account, like the Red Wedding, and even just the beginning of the book, where the Starks find the direwolf pups. So I've sampled the work, I've sampled it, but I've fallen into a deep, dark hole of YouTube content about Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and the such. Let me know what you're most excited. It's so close, guys. Oh, when did it say it's coming out? When is the release date? Come on, please give me a release date. Oh, dang it. They haven't given me a release date. It's okay. Let me just do a real quick Google search. Let's see. The release date for House of the Dragon. It's coming out August 21st. We got just a couple of weeks, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you want to keep up with what I have to think, as well as Joshua and Wyatt, my brother and friend, that we do content on this channel, well, most likely we're going to talk about it at length on our podcast, more so than this channel. This channel, we kind of talk about stuff leading up to it, and maybe a little bit after it comes out. But if you want to keep up with our review, our thoughts, our excitement, and our, disappointments here and there, go check out Wiseworks Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, or any podcast app like Stitcher, Apple Podcast, and the such. If you like video podcasts, we have a high-quality one for you, both on Spotify and on YouTube. Thank you guys so much. If you want to consider supporting us on Patreon, go to the link in the description, select a tier that best fits your content needs and content profits? I don't know. Content benefits. There we go. Thank you guys. I love you. And I'll see you in the very next video.